I've cruised to Alaska 3 times on 2 different cruise lines and learned a lot of valuable lessons in the process. Between picking an itinerary, packing, and booking shore excursions, there's a lot of decisions you need to make before your cruise begins. One wrong move and you can easily miss out on something you'll regret later, or overpay, or both. In this episode of The Chill Cruiser, I'll explore the 26 tips I wish I knew before booking a cruise to Alaska. If you're planning an Alaskan cruise or thinking about it, you're not going to want to miss this. Hey cruisers, Andrew from Toronto, Canada here. Welcome to The Chill Cruiser, where I explore cruising from a chill perspective. Today I'm going to explore the 26 lessons I've learned after cruising to Alaska 3 times on 2 different cruise lines. Like any cruise destination, you need to do a lot of research and make a lot of decisions to plan a successful cruise, and Alaska is no different. Cruise lines don't help you simplify that research since most of their materials are focused on selling you a shore excursion or getting you to shop. I enjoyed every cruise I took to Alaska, but on each visit, I learned things that I would do differently next time. Today I'll share all of them with you to hopefully help it make it easier for you to plan the cruise of a lifetime. First, let's quickly look at the geography. Most cruises sail out of Seattle or Vancouver, Canada, and do round-trip itineraries that stop in Juneau, Ketchikan, and Skagway, with scenic cruising of glaciers like Hubbard, Dawes, and College Fjord. Some itineraries also spend an entire day in Glacier Bay National Park. Cruises that sail out of Seattle or another U.S. port have to make a brief stop in a Canadian port like Victoria to comply with U.S. law that requires foreign flagships to stop at a foreign port. You can also do one-way cruises between Vancouver and Seattle and ports in northern Alaska like Whittier near Anchorage and Seward. One-way cruises let you spend more time at Alaskan ports and also give you the opportunity to extend your trip to include a few nights at a place like a wilderness lodge. This gives you more time to immerse yourself in Alaska, but also adds a lot of costs. There's a lot to cover, so I'll break the lessons down into categories like ports, packing, and shore excursions, but I'll start with itineraries. My first lesson is that cruising Alaska is a stunning experience, and I would argue it's an essential part of any cruise lover's bucket list. It's a beautiful sail away from either Seattle or Vancouver, and the scenery just gets more breathtaking as you sail into Alaska. Alaska is also a very chill-friendly destination because you can enjoy so much of what it has to offer from the ship, including the snow-topped mountains and glaciers. My second lesson is to pay very close attention to the itineraries you're considering because many look alike but can vary dramatically. I had one subscriber who relied on the map to make her decision only to realize that the port she thought was included was actually substituted with something else. You also want to make sure that the port stops offer enough time to properly explore the local sites. Some Norwegian cruises only stop at some ports for a few hours, which isn't nearly enough time. Port stops in Alaska should be at least 8 hours so you have time to do an excursion and explore the nearby town. My next lesson is to make sure your itinerary includes scenic cruising of a glacier stop. This is usually the highlight of an Alaskan cruise because the ship stops for an hour or 2 or more and often does a 360 to allow guests throughout the ship to get a good look. There's also usually a local expert on board narrating throughout the stop to share the glacier's history and points of interest. Like with any cruise, the itinerary can change for any reason, and the glacier stop might be canceled. I was on an Alaska cruise on Majestic Princess in 2023, and hours before we were scheduled to visit the Dawes Glacier, we learned that due to a medical evacuation, the visit was canceled, and we went directly to our next port. Princess didn't reschedule the glacier stop, provide any compensation, or even do a lecture to show us what we missed. It was canceled, and we never heard about the glaciers for the rest of the cruise. That's why I like that Holland America offers a glacier guarantee. If your ship doesn't make a scheduled glacier stop, you receive a credit equal to 15% of your cruise fare. If you really want to maximize your glacier time, then my next lesson is to choose an itinerary that includes Glacier Bay National Park, which is a full-day experience where you see some of the most stunning sights in Alaska while also visiting multiple glaciers. Park rangers board the ship and narrate the visit while also hosting events and enrichment talks. I cruised to Glacier Bay on my 3rd cruise, and even though it was foggy most of the time, it was still one of my favorite experiences in Alaska. Only 2 ships are allowed to visit Glacier Bay on any given day, and most of the permits are allocated to Holland America and Princess. Let's move on to embarkation ports. I've cruised to Alaska out of Seattle and Vancouver, and both have their pros and cons. Both are located right downtown or close to downtown. Both can easily get congested when multiple ships are in port, although I must admit that my embarkation in Seattle was much smoother than Vancouver. There are a lot more factors that can cause delays and overcrowding in Vancouver because ships have to pass under a bridge that's subject to tide restrictions, and you need to go through US immigration at the terminal. But Vancouver is a beautiful city, and I would still cruise out of there again. I did a video with tips on embarking in Vancouver. You can find a link here or in the description. There are also pros and cons to doing a round-trip cruise that starts and ends in the same city versus a one-way cruise that starts or ends in Alaska. While round-trip cruises are most cost-effective because you can book a round-trip flight out of a well-served international airport, you lose at least 2 potential port days getting to and from the embarkation city. Starting or ending your cruise in Alaska means airfare will likely be more expensive, but it also gives you the opportunity to spend more time in the state and stay at the wilderness lodges run by cruise lines like Princess and Holland America. Round-trip cruises offer a great introduction to Alaska, while one-way cruises let you really immerse yourself in the region. Round-trip cruises longer than a week are somewhere in the middle, allowing you to see more ports while still returning to the port of origin. I guess it all comes down to how much time and money you have to spend on the trip. Let's move on to lessons learned about cruise lines and ships in Alaska. My next lesson is that some things are the same across different cruise lines, while other aspects are very different. My first cruise was on Celebrity Solstice in 2018, then Majestic Princess in 2023, and then Ruby Princess in 2024. When I look back and try to compare them, what stood out was that the Celebrity experience was mostly just like any other Celebrity cruise, other than the day we were at the glacier and there was a local expert providing commentary over the ship's PA system. It was a great cruise, but there wasn't a lot of enrichment or programming specific to Alaska. My experiences with Princess were inconsistent. On Majestic, the ship arrived in Vancouver several hours late, so embarkation was a mess, as was getting on and off the ship at ports, and they canceled the glacier stop. But they did offer onboard events like Puppies in the Piazza, where you get to meet Alaskan sled dog puppies as young as 5 weeks old. Ruby Princess had its act together with a much smoother embarkation, a great stop in Glacier Bay with enrichment talks, and the Puppies in Piazza event. I guess it all depends on how much enrichment you want offered on the ship. I would imagine Holland America takes it up a notch since they're known for specializing in onboard enrichment and have been sailing to Alaska, the longest of all the major cruise lines. My next lesson is that a balcony cabin is definitely worth the splurge in Alaska if your budget allows. It lets you take in all the sights from the comfort of your cabin. There's just nothing like having your morning coffee on the balcony as the mountains of Alaska whisk by, while the ship's visiting a glacier or there's a whale sighting. Granted, you can still see those sights from the ship's public areas, but it just feels special when you can enjoy that scenery in your own private space. Speaking of public areas, my next lesson is to scope out the observation areas available on your ship. Some cruise ships have walk-around promenades that let you enjoy the scenery from every angle. Some ships also have observation decks like this one on Ruby Princess, which is sort of hidden above the bridge. Some ships even have multiple observation decks like these on Holland America's Amsterdam that are opened at key times like during a glacier visit. If you're a camera buff eager to take lots of pictures and footage, these different locations can really help with taking the perfect shot. In most cases, you can find these observation areas by looking closely at the ship's deck plan. More on cameras in a moment. Let's talk about packing, which is a popular subject when talking about cruising to Alaska. The weather can change drastically in a matter of hours, so you really do need to prepare for spring and summer weather. When we sailed out of Vancouver in July, it was summer weather and everyone was in shorts. Within a few hours, the temperature dropped 30 degrees Fahrenheit, so you definitely need to bring different layers, and I would highly recommend a waterproof jacket and shoes, and an umbrella if they're not provided by your cruise line. For most cruise lines, umbrellas are only included in premium cabins like suites. Holland America is the only mainstream cruise line I'm aware of that provides umbrellas in almost every cabin, regardless of category. If you plan to spend a lot of time outdoors, rain or shine, then definitely add waterproof pants to the mix as well. I mentioned finding good photo spots earlier. That leads me to my next lesson, which is to bring a camera with decent zooming capabilities and lots of free memory. The ship gets pretty close to a lot of sights that you're going to want to capture with your camera, but you still need a decent amount of zoom to get a good shot. You're also going to take hundreds of photos, and the last thing you want to worry about while taking a picture of a whale or a glacier is freeing up memory space. If internet connectivity is important to you, you can definitely pack your laptop or tablet. Internet access used to be an issue in Alaska, with dead zones that would last for the better part of a day or more, depending on where the ship sailed. That's less of an issue now that most ships are equipped with Starlink, which offers connectivity even in remote regions. Let's move on to lessons learned about ports in Alaska. The first lesson is don't expect a lot of useful port information from your cruise line. Their websites are usually focused on selling you shore excursions, and if you receive any materials on board, it's usually focused on shopping. Most cruise lines do offer port presentations while on board that you can usually access on demand in your cabin, but that's way too late to make the most of your time in port. The website What's in Port is a great resource for practical information on the different cruise terminals and their proximity to the local town or city, as well as points of interest and details on how to get around. My next lesson is that ports can get very crowded depending on how many ships are docked with yours. Cruise lines are sending more ships to Alaska than ever, so this is increasingly becoming an issue. You can use What's in Port to find out if a port will be busy on the itinerary you're considering. On the page for that port, you'll find a link to the port schedule, so you can see how many ports are scheduled to call on that port on any given day and when. My next lesson is that most ports in Alaska are very walkable. Juneau, Ketchikan, and Skagway are the main ports on most itineraries, and in most cases, cruise ships dock right in town. So you can walk off the ship and explore. That doesn't mean that all local attractions are close by, but it does mean that some points of interest, along with shopping and restaurants, are a short walk from the ship. There are some cruise piers that are located far from town. In Sitka, the cruise pier is a 10 to 15 minute shuttle ride from town. In Juneau, the AJ Pier is located about a 20-minute walk from town, and shuttle buses are usually available for a free or a small fee, depending on your cruise line. You can check if your cruise ship's been assigned this pier on the Cruise Line Agencies of Alaska website. My next lesson is that if you want to see wildlife, book an excursion and don't leave it to chance. You're pretty much guaranteed to see a whale tail at some point in the cruise, but it's a crapshoot for everything else. So if you want to see bears or eagles or something specific, book an excursion that'll take you to their natural habitat. Let's talk about the must-see points of interest on an Alaskan cruise. The first is something you can see before your cruise starts in Vancouver, and that's the Capilano Suspension Bridge Park. This is a stunning park only a few minutes drive from downtown Vancouver. You can cross a 450-foot swaying suspension bridge, traverse walkways high in the trees, and walk along a cantilever path that clings to a granite cliff. It's a thrilling experience, and it's one of my favorite destination cruise experiences of all time. The best part is that there's a free shuttle right in front of the cruise terminal. I did a video all about visiting Capilano. You can find a link here and in the description. In Juneau, don't miss the Mendenhall Glacier and Visitor Center, where there's a half-mile trail that offers several great perspectives of the glacier and a waterfall. I also love the Gold Belt Tram, which takes you up 1,800 feet for a spectacular view of the area. Juneau is also a great spot to go whale watching. In Ketchikan, don't miss the Great Alaska Lumberjack Show, which features real ESPN lumberjack athletes who bring to life the storied logging history of Southeast Alaska. In Skagway, you absolutely can't miss the White Pass Railway. You travel in a vintage passenger coach along a narrow gauge railway that takes you to an elevation of close to 3,000 feet in an hour and a half, with some stunning sights along the way. Before I continue, I just want to say that if you're finding this video helpful, please give it a like and consider subscribing. It helps me grow my channel and make sure you won't miss future videos about cruising from a chill perspective. Let's talk about my lessons learned specifically with respect to excursions. Alaska has a wide range of options, but also some of the most expensive. You'll need a big budget for bucket list excursions like a helicopter ride over glaciers, which costs close to $1,000 per person, or a sled dog ride, which costs several $100s per person. I personally haven't done either of those excursions and still enjoy myself, but they are the quintessential options that are a must-do for some. Speaking of excursion costs, there are several ways to save money. For some experiences that are available right by where the ship docks, you can save by booking attractions directly with a tour provider. This is an option for experiences like the White Pass Railway, the Gold Belt Tram, and the Lumberjack Show. Cruise lines offer tickets to these attractions with a markup of 10% or more that you can avoid simply by just booking with them online directly. You can find links to their sites in the description. Another way to save is to use a third-party excursions provider like Shore Excursions Group. They use the same tour companies as the cruise line, but charge less, sometimes significantly less, and they offer a guarantee to get you back to the ship on time, or they'll pay your expenses to meet the ship at the next port. Use the link on your screen or in the description, and you'll help me grow my channel. Another important thing to keep in mind with excursions is that they can sell out months in advance of your cruise, so it's important to do your research and book early to avoid disappointment. Again, this is becoming increasingly important since more cruise ships than ever are calling on Alaska ports each day, while capacity at most attractions is limited. So there you have it, everything I've learned about cruising to Alaska. I hope it was helpful. If you've cruised to Alaska before and have tips I haven't already covered, please put them in the comments below. If you haven't cruised to Alaska, I'd love to know if the tips were helpful or if you have any questions. I mentioned that cruising out of Vancouver can be stressful. You can find another link to my video with embarkation tips here. Thank you for watching, and happy cruising.